Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. For both the people, the readers, and we have Brieanna Chillious, who is a candidate for TUSD Governing Board. So as we've done in the past, what I'd like to do is we're going to have everybody on mute. You please ask questions in the chat and we'll filter through them as we go along. I'm going to ask Bree to kind of introduce herself, and then I'll have a couple of big time questions to ask, and then we'll move into any other questions. So Bree, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, Kurt. Thank you so much for having me here. It is a really honor to be here with just the Arizona Daily Star folks. It's great, a lovely, awesome opportunity. So as Coach Kurt mentioned, my name is Brieanna Chillious. I like to go by Bree, like the baking cheese. And I am currently the children's librarian over at Quincy Douglas Library within the Pima County Public Library System, where I oversee children's services from ages birth to 8 and provide their families, their community members, as well as caregivers, resources and access to helpful resources around early literacy, early childhood education literacy, and then also library programming that's all encompassed within that. Before that, I was a school library assistant within TUSD, within the amazing school at CE Rose Pre-K through 8 Elementary School. So I was not there for long, but for the 6 months that I was there, I did make a positive, huge difference. My colleagues can vouch on me for that. They can vouch for me on that. So they were really super supportive of like the library initiatives that I wanted to do for my kids there. I'm just going to preface and say that you will probably hear me say a lot, my kids. I do have biological children, but I do consider the children students that I worked with at CE Rose Elementary School as my kids. That's just how I see them.
Sure.
So I did a lot for my kids there, and it was a blast. And so I had a goal to set for myself every day, which was, how do I get a child to read without actually telling them how to read? And to also have them to learn and understand that reading is fun and beneficial without telling them that. So of course, just being my bookish, nerdy self, rocking my biblioparaphernalia with my earrings, as you can see, and my book necklace, I was just bookish, and that was really infectious for my kids. And before I knew it, I would have kids come into the library and just tell me like they've read this book, and it would be like a grade or two levels above their reading level. And so I want to think that I've imparted some kind of difference, impact on them while I was there. We did Bookapalooza, just a celebration of them and just books, and that was amazing. Ask the teachers at CE Rose, they'll know exactly what I mean when I mention Bookapalooza. So I did my short stint within TUSD as a former TUSD employee. But before that, I was the early childhood education coordinator for the Pima County Public Library, serving within my second term as an AmeriCorps service member. For those who are not familiar with AmeriCorps, it's the American version of Peace Corps, but you only do 1 year. And here in America, or within like the US territories in Guam, Puerto Rico and Guam. But before that too, I I started my initial AmeriCorps service term at Make Way for Books, an early literacy organization, not-for-profit, dedicated to providing families across Arizona, Tucson, Arizona, equitable, easy access for all families and caregivers and their little ones, and learning how they can like take advantage of like programming and services that this amazing organization offered. I was their digital division specialist, and so I worked with the digital director, who's now the chief technology officer, Fernando Gonzalez, with promoting the app, which is a book sharing app that families can do with a little, with recommended read times of how much they could be exposed to that. And I got my education from the U of A, but not the U of A here, the U of A, which is the University at Albany from New York. So I think it's a term that like the folks down here use, because I'm not from Arizona. I'm no longer a snowbird. So I think I'm an official Tucsonan now. So
Mhm.
I celebrated my 3 years, August 17th. So I've been here 3 years,
Mhm.
and so I love it. And I'm looking forward to just seeing the amazing things I can do within my service role as a children's librarian with Pima County Public Library.
Okay. So what made you want to make that leap from being, going from library to governing board?
Well, I feel I offer a swath of experiences and knowledge that would be needed to uh, be added to the conversations, especially when it comes to around the current existing status of school libraries in particular. There are other things that are of heightened concern, but
Mhm.
since I come from that realm and to answer your question specifically, I was a trained. I wanted to be. Well, I actually went to school to be an archivist. I wanted to go into museum archives and to be a special collections librarian. That was not the trajectory. That was not in the cards. So it was just a detour, a scenic detour that I took uh, after I graduated from library school, and I loved the route that I was taking within my scenic route. And I'm like, well, I have experience working with kids. I have worked in schools before. My mother is a teacher, so I have like personal close ties with that world. And also, just I'm really aware of how children can be serviced with like keeping in mind, being mindful and cognitive of like what the needs are, the particular needs, particularly service populations that are marginalized, historically marginalized, and disenfranchised. I think that I offer uh, just within my repertoire of like education, experience, knowledge, and skill set. And then also having that experience working as a former TUSD uh, worker, employee, I can actually bring to light and also amplify and heighten the the serious underexposed deficiencies that are really present across the district, particularly with their school libraries and the status of these libraries across the district. All 80, I forget the number, 84, it's either 84 or 89 schools total. I think it's 89 schools within the district. And many of them, over 70% of them, do not have full-time certified, trained, salaried library media specialists or school librarians to kind of keep alive the library program. So amongst other things, I bring in that swath of experience and I can actually speak to these experiences because I've myself seen these deficiencies in my line of work at CE Rose, not to put them in a negative light, but this can be a prime example of how much these school libraries matter to our kiddos. It's not just a place for checking books in and out the kid.
Right.
If there's a lack of advocacy or a prioritization to invest or reinvest certain allocation
Mhm.
dollars pouring into these spaces, we will see the residual effects of how a school library will not be taken care of and how much that will sorely be detrimental to our students within the coming years. Because our kiddos are right now learning about information literacy when they're just starting high school or even college. And that's not a good starting point.
Mhm.
Slowly but surely they need to learn about these things while in their primary years in elementary school, not just secondary school, because they are conducting research projects. And so they need to know basic computer literacy skills. Information literacy skills is important. So I think just all this knowledge
Mhm.
I bring to the board, and I can actually add my voice to conversations and certain policies and or addendums made to existing policies, and I can actually voice um, my grievances and add to that within the pot of decisions that are made,
Mhm.
especially when the advocacy and investment or reinvestment in certain
Mhm.
um, initiatives, programs, policies, and services that we're trying to provide for students.
Yeah, you brought up, the like investment and things like that, and with regard to libraries. Let's say that you're elected. What's kind of like the first thing or first couple things you would do with regard to libraries?
Oh, that is a really good question. Thank you so much for this. I would say if I was elected, I would make it a priority to learn from our existing TUSD school library assistants. I think it's important that we need to learn, in order to tackle a problem, we need to learn what is it.
Mhm.
So I truly do think that getting in touch and trying to reach out to a segment of the school community population to understand what those issues are, what the underlying issues are, or what issues have, been, what has been exasperated, what has worked, what has not worked. Do they feel supported, just like our teacher colleagues, our educators? Because just like their teacher counterpart, their educator counterparts too, they don't feel supported. And how or why don't they feel supported? Because they don't make it a priority for them to really pour it into the staff, just like they pour it into our educators, our teachers within a district. So I would try to understand what the underlying issues are, or what's like one or two big things, first and foremost. Normally it is, there's no staff. That's going to probably be the big thing that's going to be an existing issue right now within 84, 89 schools across the district. So I would make it my business to see if we could, again, really study it's a budget book, and to see the history, the custodial history of what budget cuts have been made published. Um, Going back to 2014, because that's when they had cut school librarians
Mhm.
um, out of that budget. And so ever since then, a lot of schools have suffered because they haven't had trained staff, certified, salaried full-time staff members to staff those spaces. We are now replaced with school library assistants who are only doing so much. Just like the nurses, schools are also sharing library assistants
Mhm.
3 times a week, and they're overexpent physically, emotionally. There's only so much that you can do. You can't make up for the hours of full-time day if you are also if you're also giving your time away to another school who does not have a school library assistant, let alone a librarian, to do the functions that we hire a school library staff to do,
Mhm.
amongst other things. I will make it a priority to see what the issue is, see about filling those slots, uh, really see about investing money into not just hiring trained librarians, school librarians, but then also the existing staff as well, to also look at them as well and to see what can be done and what could we do to make you feel supported. And I'm going to speak from experience.
Mhm.
As much as I wanted to stay, but not. And I'll tell you why. It's because uh, I felt undervalued, not by the school that I was employed at, but there's this idea in the overarching district that certain things have value, or have placed value, and others don't.
Mhm.
They see the value of increasing wages, livable wages for their staff.
Mhm.
Nurses and libraries are included, but in this case, library assistants are included in that segment of the population that we're talking about. I had to leave because I didn't feel like there were any promotional opportunities for me to get to where I wanted, above. That was just for me. I really can't
Mhm.
speak for library assistant, but I was a person who had a master's degree in library science for that position that required a GED,
Mhm.
aren't properly trained. So just working with them to see about getting those promotional opportunities if they are interested, and we can pour into that staff about um, really promoting them and training them to see if they would be comfortable running the libraries until we get actual staff, not just one person running the library, but additional help, so that way other ventures can be pursued with our students.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think you're touching on a really big issue locally and nationally is teacher retention. And it kind of sounds like you're talking about valuing teachers, offering promotional opportunities, and that type of thing. And I guess to wrap that up, is there anything else that to deal with the problem of teacher retention? Is there anything else that you would like to do?
Thank you so much for this question. I
Mhm.
feel like that's a good one too. So it's always interesting when people say there's a teacher shortage.
Mhm.
It's not a teacher shortage. At least, but I don't think there's a teacher shortage. There's not a teacher shortage. There's a salary shortage
Mhm.
because there are qualified, trained, certified, specialized teachers that they're more than willing to fill in those slots. But
Mhm.
because of the history of TUSD and not them valuing their teachers, not really supporting them, not hearing them when they voice their grievances, and their grievances fall on deaf ears, and they feel like they don't have the support within classroom management or having manageable workloads to or to even improve the efficacy of just within their regular day-to-day duties, all while maintaining and managing student behavior. That's a lot.
Mhm.
And they're not getting paid at the rate or the same level that they're dealing with all of these issues within their 7 to 8 hour school day. There's only so much that a teacher can do. So there are people that are willing to fill the slots, no problem. I know that to be true because I'm still friends with teachers who have left, my teacher friends who left TUSD to go to another district.
Mhm.
It's not a teacher shortage. It's a matter of, are we willing to pay them um, like we say we should? And I believe we should. I don't understand why it's a budgetary issue if this has been voiced all, and I'm not from here. I'm doing my research. I'm doing my homework on the history of teacher retention and hiring rates, and just looking at the overall Arizona certified teachers just within Arizona. I'm not going to get into those stats, but I
Mhm.
do that it is a state where we don't value our teachers that we should. I want to be a part of those decisions where, we want to be able to do a more than a 1% increase for teacher salaries. I'm not going to name the entity that uh, uh, purported this,
Mhm.
but I feel like uh, we need to really increase the salary.
Mhm.
I will not drop the name of the teacher, um, but it is a teacher colleague that I work with at CE Rose, and he has taught there for over 25 years. And it breaks my heart that there are conversations that are going on that, there are times that, this particular teacher wanted to leave, but couldn't because the students have made them stay,
Mhm.
but they don't feel taken care of by the district, by the employer that they're teaching their students in. So I would say that just, I really do feel like a conversation needs to keep going.
Mhm.
And I'm just going to be the squeaky wheel. I want to be the squeaky wheel that until it gets soil. We really need to keep harping on the fact that we need to continuously increase livable wage for teachers, as well as staff and anyone else employed by the district. Otherwise, we're going to have so many leaving and so few staying. And I've seen the rates of retention. It's not good. It's not looking good. And I feel like that's a poor reflection of what the district is doing or what it's not doing to retain the teachers needed. Because I promise you, had there been something done about the salary shortage, we would have already had slots already filled by teachers willing to do another school year, knowing that they'll get their 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 due salary, the salary that we should pay them at,
Mhm.
as well as offering lines of communication, life support, and also actually hearing their feedback and not internalizing and think it's criticism when they're actually expressing there are issues that are happening. We trust you to take care of this. And if they don't feel supported, because you can have all the money in the world too, but if they also don't feel supported, what's the point of staying in a district or in an entity that's not going to hear you, let alone acknowledge the issues that you are experiencing?
Mhm. Yeah, along these lines, something that comes up in letters to the editor every once in a while is the district hiring third-party teachers. What's your take on that?
I feel as though, okay, I obviously am not a part of those conversations about really getting creative about how will districts like the USD will fill those slots. I don't know the deeper nuances, so it'll be really easy for me to say, well, they shouldn't have done that, and here's what and this is why.
Mhm.
I can do that, but I don't know the nuance of why they went down that path to contract outside teachers
Mhm.
or outside just companies to have teachers come in and virtually teach classes. Um, I'm just going to say very respectfully and with grace, I don't think that's an appropriate way to solve an existing problem. I feel like that's just sweeping the issue under the rug. Um, I truly believe that ignoring the problem won't go away, and finding something else, finding, creating, creating a solution and finding it elsewhere, I don't think is beneficial or conducive to what the district should be doing right now, which is to really work hard on focusing on how can we teach, how can we increase teacher salary, staff salaries. And I think that's why, it could be my guess, it's my guess, but I think that's why there's such a huge outsource of like companies coming in to fill these vacancies within the district, but not, and we don't know if these are permanent placeholders. I haven't read like the latest article on it. I don't know personally if these are placeholders, temporary placeholders of trying to resolve the existing issue at hand,
Mhm.
or if this is a permanent solution. Um, I don't think that'll solve the issue that's still going on in the district, which is still addressing salary shortages, teachers not willing to come back to teach unless they know that they'll get a comparable comparative to other districts outside of the USD of what their outside district counterparts are getting paid. Um, they're not going to budge, and I know a few
Mhm.
that will not budge. They intentionally moved to other districts just so that they knew that they would be paid their worth and be supported. And it's a bad reflection on TUSD, in my opinion. So I feel as though the district had to come up with certain decisions. Again, conversations have happened, and there's deeper nuances that were explored in depth in like many venues that were probably explored to come up with that solution.
Mhm.
But I don't think that should be a permanent solution to the existing problem that we're still experiencing.
Okay.
I think just addressing the salary shortage and just paying teachers, really working with our teachers and working with them closely. How can we make them feel supported, and how can we know that they will be here for our students as well as for each other, um, so that way they can be fruitful and happy and healthy in their careers as educators. We got to work with them and we got to hear them out, because to me right now it just seems like they're saying so much, and what they're saying, it's falling on deaf ears.
Mhm.
That's why they're leaving.
Yeah. Well, if you're elected, you're going to have to deal with a big change in school funding from the state level with the expansion of the voucher program. I guess we don't know exactly how that's going to play out at the district level yet. But what are your thoughts on that? And if elected, how would you deal with possibly parents wanting to move their kids to private schools out of public schools? Just it's complicated. But how would you deal with all that?
Yeah, it is complicated. I would say, hmm, I would like to think that the district would come up with ways to prevent families, their students from attending private schools or applying for vouchers to attend private schools. Um, I'm doing so much other research. I'm the voucher issue is one of the things that's kind of like new on my plate that I'm learning about. Um, but I would say I feel like it's the district's response, any school district, not specifically TUSD, but districts across on a national level should be able, well, I think I'm just gonna say like the main job of the school district, of any school district, should be to support the school communities that exists uh, within the schools all throughout the district. Families, that includes the families, teachers who are parents of these students, um, educators, students. I really feel that the district has a really huge role in helping to make meaningful changes. But I always go back to really working with our school community members. Families are included within that population because they have the students that attend these schools. Um, kind of want to look at just how or why families would feel the need, or a parent would feel the need that they need to take the child out of the district altogether. And normally 90% of the time, there's going to be probably a laundry list of reasons why.
Mhm.
I think it's really important to know the big reason why. And I always think that, well, we want families to stay in the district. We want families to stay within the schools, public schools, and not go to private schools. Or if we could prevent from doing that, I really think it's like having a conversation. Again, it goes back to, are we meaning the district as an entity, are we really taking care of our teachers? Are we really listening to the accounts of like them experiencing burnout, of them being sick, of them not feeling supported, and that manifests in ugly ways that prevents them from teaching what they need to teach students, or like any other grievances, specific grievances such as like truancy or tardy classroom management or classroom behavior, or just how the code of conduct is like stipulated and how that applies to like particular kids, or how that is how the students are receiving um, the result of misconduct, of not following student conduct in schools. It could be a plethora of reasons, but I really think that, and it's again, like you said, Kurt, it's very complicated. But I always like to think that again, going back to working with our families,
Mhm.
and it'll be particularly helpful to hear from the teachers who also happen to be parents of the students within the schools. And we've seen a lot that teachers who may teach in a district will preferably put their kids in a Montessori school or in a private school, not in the schools that they're teaching. We want to be prideful in what we do and what we provide the services and programming for I understand that there's a lot of distrust um, towards the district. However, I truly think things could turn around if we were to realistically look at the fact of like how these decisions are going to affect the families directly or indirectly. It's going to impact them one way or another. I always want to be for, we don't want you to leave. Could you give us a reason why? And when you give us that reason, we want to hear from you. How could we make it better so that we can keep your child, keep the student from, or keep the family from going to another school, another school that's probably more well-funded, more well-endowed financially with monetary donations. They're taking care of, they're supportive. Their tax dollars are, they're supporting the programming that they get.
Mhm.
So I think it's important to like really have a conversation. But like you said,
Yeah, it's so in the our recent years, probably much earlier than that as well, there's been a lot of controversy about schools and libraries in particular, in terms of what books should be carried, which ones shouldn't. And we have a question from a reader about this, saying, we can expect various groups are going to try to apply pressure to the board about education policy, including what libraries should offer to students and other things. So the question is, do you have a strategy for dealing with these pressures, which may include threats and insults?
absolutely. I want to say, well, thank you for the question. I'm going to tap into my inner librarian, my inner school librarian here. I'm going to be using some acronyms. Um,
Okay.
I'll actually say what the organizations are and the divisions in the offices. So ALA, the American Library Association, they have their OIF, their Office of Intellectual Freedom.
Their office of what?
Intellectual freedom.
Okay. Mhm.
And so within this newly created task force, because we're really seeing a lot of book challenges and book bans coming up, they're sprouting up. Librarians are losing their jobs over doing what they were trained to do, which was to uh, just be able to discern what needs the student population will need. And it's a diverse range. And also inclusion plays a part in this too. We also have to look at, there has to be equitable access to all students, what particular book that fits them. So to answer your question, I would say that um, I wouldn't really tolerate misconduct. There are formal, respectful ways to address one's grievance. But I would say that if I was on a board, I would like to provide a policy addendum, and the readers can go look this up on the governing board's website, the district's website. Section I, subsection IJ, which talks about supplemental materials within school libraries, right? So within this subsection, basically it says that, there's a form that accompanies this too. There's a PDF that anyone can fill out, but that hasn't really been used within the last 8 years since they've cut funding of librarians in 2014. Parents could make a grievance on why they think a particular title should not be included in the library collection.
Mhm.
Intellectual freedom plays out differently in public libraries versus in school libraries. The slight differences is just privacy concerns. What students or guardians or caregivers will have access to the particular book that their children should. Uh, we all know that students can easily access, parents can access that information. In a public library, the only way that they would find out that their child would have checked out the book would be if they just, by happenstance, if they came across the book at home, somewhere in the home,
Mhm.
then there's an issue. So I would say that there are ways to express a grievance, um, even if in disagreement. And actually, this is also another source that I also like to drop or
Mhm.
share with readers too, is that I attended um, the governing board meeting that took place on July 26th, and I submitted a letter of support to the board. And this is in reference to the House Bill 2439, which is basically covers
Mhm.
materials in school libraries. So a lot of the action is around I wouldn't say vitriol, that's like too extreme, but I would say that there was a there was a huge support of a particular materials to not be put or included in the district's culturally relevant curriculum.
Mhm.
This is reinforced and backed by an organization called Teaching Tolerance, which I absolutely love. Please check it out if you ever have the chance. And they have resources and articles that teachers can talk about and share. It's a framework um, that they use to build up this culturally relevant curriculum within the district. The two books that I was in support were for The Black Kid by Christina Hammond Reeves, and then The Chicano Movement for Beginners by Macio Montoya. So these books, they weren't challenged in the traditional sense that how books are challenged, but there was a growing support to not include these books in on the list. I would say if we had something similar in the near future, I would implement a um, book challenge policy, provide an addendum to the existing policy, uh, Gord, the governing board policy online. Just provide that addendum where we will still hear those grievances. Concerned community members, as well as parents and teachers, they will still have the right when they do the call to audience to express those grievances. They still have a right to voice why they feel the way they feel about a particular word to be included. Um, but with an objectionable stance, the board will still decide on whether or not they would still, oh boy, they would still include the those materials. So it's not to eradicate or erase anyone's voices. Those voices are still or still welcome to still voice their grievances. But we need to be careful about that because a lot of times when we see this happening, we see selective reading, which eliminates the work's overall literary merit and their value. And that can be used as a tool to really teach tolerance, anti-racism, actual contextual history, historical context of actual events that have happened. And a lot of times, I think there's a particular population that are afraid of certain things imposed on children, and it's not imposed. I implore any community caregiver or any concerned community member to really get to know the work by reading it and learning about why do you think it would still wouldn't be included in on the or any curriculum or why it wouldn't belong on the shelf
Mhm.
of any school. So I know that was a long-winded answer.
Yeah, that's a complicated question. Mhm.
But I know exactly what I would do. So the short answer is to create a book challenge policy and
Mhm.
an addendum to the existing board policy,
Mhm.
board policy.
Okay. All right. So we've been going for about 40 minutes already here. So I'm wondering if there are any last minute questions from readers. And if not, I just want to give you an opportunity to, we touched on a couple different things, but I know that the TUSD Governing Board, it's a big, complicated thing. Is there anything that I haven't asked you about that you think is important or anything you just want to say to voters?
Yes, I'm going to say that so much,
Mhm.
but I'll try to be succinct as much as I possibly can. I would say that, and I was asked this in another panel that I was invited to, and it was a really interesting question. And I kind of want to bring it up here, um, just so that for full transparency, our voters will know.
Okay.
I mentioned earlier that I refer to the students that I work with at CE Rose as my kids.
Mhm.
I do not biologically have children. However, I
I'm
don't
sorry. You said you do not biologically have children. Is that what you said?
biologically, I don't have kids.
Okay, right on. Okay.
However, I don't think that is the grounds nor the excuse to eliminate my perspective and my take on bringing thoughtful, unique, creative solutions, as well as the perspective needed to make meaningful change.
Mm.
I will say flat out that it is an advantage that the other 5 candidates have, um, that they are parents
Mhm.
and they've had children or have children who have graduated, but they had children who attended TUSD schools. So they can speak about the particular nuances and give clarity. However, I think with someone with my background and my experience, despite my status, I still have a meaningful contribution to add to the conversation if we're going to be talking about meaningful changes and being a part of those decision-making conversations that's going to come down the pipeline and that's going to affect the kids one way or another, directly or indirectly. So it's to say that I'm an impassioned individual and I'm already a public servant.
Mhm.
So I work for the Pima County Public Library as a children's librarian. And so I'm already invested into the educational and intellectual welfare of our caregivers, our little ones from ages birth to 8, really providing the essential and necessary, critical, crucial information that they need to bring up healthy leaders and readers, and how that can have causal residuality into their lives. Excuse me. I would also say that as an added caveat, I already work with TUSD school communities.
Mhm.
So I'm going to be in contact with the schools that are close in proximity with the branch. So I already have that close connection, those close ties with our school community members. We work very closely with them when we are fulfilling outreach requests or just exchanging information. But my particular vested interest is working with the school library assistants, helping them mitigate the information as well as just resources that they can give to their teacher colleagues. Um, and what more that we can do on our end to ensure that they are fully backed, they are also fully supported as their community partner from the library. So I would say that, and I'll also add one more.
Mhm.
I'll stop talking. uh, I am also the youngest candidate running for one of the 2 opening seats for this election race. And I am a person of color, specifically Black, and understanding how that could play a part in just within my campaign run, trying to make a difference as a concerned community member. I truly believe, and I always say this to my colleagues, to some of my friends, and I'm going to sound like a broken record. Probably I'll just say it once here, but it's been like a broken record elsewhere.
Mhm.
And I truly believe that just like the work that we are doing, um, fabulous, amazing work that we're doing at the library, if we don't reflect the reality of the world that we live in, we will be doing our service population a huge disservice. And it's true. Libraries are learning to adapt, as well as librarians are learning to adapt to the unique needs of the patrons of the population. And so as service providers, we need to be cognizant of that. We need to be mindfully aware and be just as adaptive to those needs. So that way we have a trusting relationship with our patrons, with our community members, especially if the communities that we're serving, they're beautifully rich and diverse. And keeping well in mind of those needs too. But in the terms of just having an interest in hopefully getting on a board,
Mhm.
I could bring just as much experience needed as well as the perspective needed to bring meaningful change. Because also, unlike my other running candidates, my running mates, I worked in a TUSD school. So
Mhm.
that's an advantage that I have over. So I can clearly articulate as well as give extra crystal clear clarity of the existing issues that I've witnessed and I've experienced and I've overheard from my amazing colleagues, and what I can do to bring forth that change if I was a sitting board member. A lot of times I often see or hear, and I never thought I'd be in a political in a political race or campaign or anything, never in my life. This is something I thought I'd never do. Yet here I am. It just happenstance. But just I feel as though that if I were to be on a board, I feel like I could make meaningful change needed because I can actually speak to the issues at hand. And it's a unique advantage that I have. But either way, my attitude is it's really for the children, it's really for the kids. Because that's my service population as a children's librarian and as a former TUSD library assistant. That was my service population.
Mhm.
Students from ages 5 to 14. So it's near and dear to my heart. And I did not want to leave CE Rose.
Mhm.
I love being their library assistant, well, their elementary librarian, because I was it in that position. And I had so much fun with the kids. Just my kids visiting, but I ultimately had to leave. And so I wanted to make sure if I was ever elected, ever, that I would prevent another person that is in the same position from ever leaving the genuine connections that they've made with their kids. It did break my heart, and I really didn't want to leave. But it was because of the existing issues, not within the school itself, but then within the overarching district, across the district. There are problematic things that were made evident and were clearly pointed out.
Mhm.
And I feel supported to get those to get that promotional opportunity to become a certified, to make it easier for someone who had a master's,
Mhm.
or make it easier for someone else to get training if they were existing library staff. There's only so much that they can do and they don't have the time. I wanted to make sure if I was ever elected that I would do as much as I can, work as hard as I can, voice and amplify those issues to the board and make the decisions needed. So that way we can prevent not just also the teachers,
Mhm.
but then more library assistants from leaving the district and going out, because we really do need them. We don't just need school librarians. We need teachers too. Everyone's needed, but we got to take care of them first, and they will take care of everything else. So that's why I'm running.
Okay. All right, wonderful. Okay, cool. So I think we'll wrap it up. We got 50 minutes. And so I just want to thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us. And I apologize for interjecting the few times I did, but I just wanted to make sure that we could hear what you said. All right, so we are going to continue on today. This is a little plug for the next ones. We have at 4 p.m., we have TUSD board candidates Luis A. Gonzalez, William R. Soland, and Rebecca Sapien. I'm not sure. I'm sorry. I'm having trouble with pronunciations. But anyway, so we look forward to that. And again, thank you so much. This is Brieanna Chillious,
Yes,
running
sir.
for TUSD Governing Board. All right, so thank you everybody for coming up, and thank you, Bree.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.